quite literally the biggest day in our lives when it comes to wrestling. I mean, to be fair, I've been a fan for some 30 years now. Silk, how long have you been a fan of pro wrestling?
What year did Flair win the Rumble from number 2?
92, so same as me, 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah, probably the biggest thing that's happened in the 30 years we've been watching. Vince McMahon has retired, ladies and gents. Obviously, Vince McMahon no longer going to be involved with WWE, obviously, as CEO. Creative control was gone as well. Bruce Pritchard now is currently the head of creative. Of course, as well, Kevin Dunn is still about for the time being. There's rumors about his potential future. He's obviously been involved with the producing side of things also. We know Triple H now obviously is now taking over John Laurinaitis' role of head of talent relations. We've got Nick Khan, of course, who was a nobody to WWE, started at the bottom, is now joint CEO with Stephanie going forward. So much has happened. It's been absolutely mental over 24 hours. At the time, couldn't do a live video myself personally at that time, but I thought it was good to reflect, get the information in, see where we're at, and then we got time to digest it, give a bit more of a balanced review rather than just going for that initial gut reaction without too much information. And obviously, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, NXSteve, who's joined in the house as well. First off, so what was your reaction? Because obviously you sent me this information. I got this information from you. What did you think when you first saw this?
It's just one of them things where, you know, when you talk about something for so long and then it actually happens and you're like, nah, you're not serious. This hasn't actually happened. And it was like, I was sitting there thinking today and I was like, I'm 36 years old. And for the majority of my life, there's been two predominant consistencies. One is football, and predominantly Arsenal Football Club. I've supported them for as long as I can remember, so 30 plus years. The other one is wrestling. And for Vince McMahon to not be a part of something that's been a part of my life for 30 years, it's really strange. Like I said, you imagine you watch a film and your favorite character just all of a sudden is killed off. It's kind of along them kind of lines. You're just like, it's a shocking moment. And I mean, unless Vince McMahon wanted to upstage the return of CM Punk in some way or another, or do you know what I mean? It's a massive turning point and a massive talking point in professional wrestling.
It really is. And the thing is, you sent me the tweet, and one of the things, we've got a few comments flying already. And Martin Correa, one of them, what were you both up to upon hearing the biggest news in wrestling? Obviously, I got the message via WhatsApp from NXSteve, and literally, I was with the wife, and I literally was like, I need to read this for a second. Because I was like, I read it and was like, nah, that can't be true. And you know, there's like these joke parody accounts of Vince McMahon, and I was like, but no, the verified tick is there. I was like, that's legit. I was like, I need just a couple of minutes just to go on like Twitter, just go on other side. And it was everywhere. Then you looked on like YouTube and it was like everyone's doing live show. I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like this is legit. And then obviously when I got a bit of time, which was very later on in the evening, I thought, well, rather than actually jump on and just without any knowledge and not knowing anything, I thought to myself, well, you know, one of my favorite sources to go to for information these days is Tom Colohue. I think he's very accurate with a lot of the stuff he gets. This was before SmackDown had gone in the air as well. So I got to sort of learn everything he knew of his inside sources and information with everything. Obviously, the Brock Lesnar news broke around that time as well. And obviously, you know, a lot of things just going around all the time. So it just felt myself like there was this big news that was shocking with Vince McMahon to begin with. Then there was this idea of like, well, what's going to happen going forward with WWE, with creative and stuff. Obviously, I say with Tom in that video, he was the source there that gave me information that Bruce Pritchard is the one currently in head of creative. Whether that be long term remains to be seen. And obviously, then we got the news about Brock Lesnar. You know, was like, no, you know, I think it was Brian Alvarez that broke that news. And obviously, then Tom sourced it, and it was like, you know, this has happened. Brock's gone. Well, if Vince is gone, I'm gone. And obviously, we wondered at the time if Brock would be gone completely from WWE. But of course, he came back and he did his job. He went to SmackDown. He came out at the end of the show. Apparently, massive rescript, all rewritten. That's been over a lot of the dirt sheets today. So, I mean, it's been a crazy 24 hours. And just obviously, just to give a shout out to our comment section very quickly, C Nation Dog in the House said this was shocking news. Noob and Co as well. Thank you all for checking out the stream, by the way. Hope you're all doing very, very well. So, I mean, literally, it just, the whole thing stunned me. But it was really, like you said, it's something we've been talking about for a long time. And I mean, obviously with this big change as well about the TV14 stuff in the last week or two has been going around also. And you said, well, we've had discussions about it. I've been talking to Jonesy Chats Wrestling about it. I said, like, well, until Vince leaves, nothing's going to change. Vince has left. So there's actually a potential things could actually change going forward. But first off, before we go into anything else, I want to answer Martin Carrillo's question for you, Silk. So where were you when you were upon this news coming?
I was literally just sitting on my sofa. My wife was, like, the way I've got my living room set up, my desk here is set up behind the sofa, and she was on just a video call with a couple of her friends. And just I had a pair of headphones on and was on YouTube. And it come up, and I just saw the thumbnail from Cultaholic. Adam Pacitti was doing a live stream, and it just said Vince McMahon resigns. And I'm like, no way, man. And I clicked on the live stream, and yeah, Adam Pacitti is just sitting there spilling it all out. And I was audibly gasped. Like, I was just like, nah, you're not serious. And then he started, like, I'm on my phone in one hand, going through Twitter, trying to find the tweets and everything else like this, and trying to watch Cultaholic. And then I'm backing out, trying to find other videos. Like, I know WrestleTalk put up one last night. What's the other one? Not Cultaholic. The one they used to be part of. WhatCulture, yeah. And I was watching their videos, and yeah, I was watching the Cultaholic stream for about 35 minutes, and like as some of the stuff was starting to come out, and my wife was like, "How important is this?" And I'm like, "This is probably the biggest thing to ever happen in wrestling in my lifetime." Obviously, like, there's people older than me that have seen more shocking things, but for me, Vince has just been a staple of professional wrestling. Like, when you think wrestling and WWE, Vince McMahon is the first thing that comes to your head because he's just been there. And for him to no longer be there, it's so shocking to say that. I mean, we were speaking a couple of weeks ago. Well, I was speaking to Jonesy, actually, and he was saying about the TV14 thing. And I said the same thing as you to him. I said, until Vince goes, nothing's really going to change. I mean, you might get a couple more swear words here and there and all those kinds of things added on, but it's the product itself that needs to change. And until Vince goes, that won't happen. And I honestly thought that Vince would die before resigning.
Yeah.
Like, what's good? That's just the way I thought he was going to be there till the nail hit the coffin. And yeah, I'm very shocked for him to have resigned.
I think that's the thing for me with that initial reaction as well. What you just said there, I felt there's no way he'd walk away. And if he was going down, then with whatever was going on, he would take it. He was not going to leave that chair regardless of what happened. Obviously, we can't escape it. Obviously, our chat is very, very well knowledgeable. Obviously, we're not going to go and turn around and say anything. There are allegations out there right now that have come from the Wall Street Journal. Obviously, we don't know what the conclusion of those will be at this particular point, so we're not going to speculate on that side of things. But what we will say is those allegations are in place on Vince McMahon right now. Obviously, there's been a lot of hush money stuff that's been speculated going around via that. And obviously, as well, one of the quotes that did come from Tom Colohue's channel last night, and I will actually eventually, because I've not done it before coming on the stream, but I will do it as soon as we finish this. I will link that on there. One of the quotes that he used was "jumped before pushed." So obviously,
that's exactly it.
It's a situation where things could be getting worse before they get better. We don't know that at this point. Perhaps more things may or may not come out, but obviously that obviously will change a lot of people's vision of what they see with this. Obviously, we can look and say, Vince McMahon, if Wikipedia is true, this is if Wikipedia is true, everybody. You have your own judgments on Wikipedia. Yeah, exactly. I believe he started in 1971 as a commentator, but I believe the CEO role, stuff like that, started in 1982. So 40 years. Like you say, we've been a fan for 30 years. And, the idea means Vince has been the constant. He's always been there. Go through anything in history, where it's, seeing the rise of Hulkamania, creating WrestleMania, giving us these big events like the Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, you name it. Vince has been the creator of all of it, taking people from the territories and making this big global brand product that we see. What we're falling in love with, professional wrestling. Vince is arguably, a big part, if not the reason why we all are here today doing what we're doing, talking about it and being passionate about it. But obviously, what can't be ignored, even if you go through some of the great highlights, and perhaps we will talk about some of those highlights during this stream, but some of the things that can't be ignored, obviously, is maybe the way that it's going to end. It's an abrupt end. It's maybe not an end that we all expected. And, you know, I think coming from it, I think a lot of people are looking at Vince McMahon at this particular moment differently, I would say. I certainly would say, from the information, without knowing whether innocent or guilty at this point, I still would say that, yeah, we have to wait until we have a complete verdict. But obviously, you know, it changes a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I see it as this is his baby, WE. Do you know what I mean? He has like, this is one of his kids essentially, and it was a case of stay, be forced out, removed, whatever.
Yeah,
I think would have damaged the business as a whole more, which is why he's decided to step down. I think he's done it in a case of, like, if all these allegations would have come out, and then you look at the share prices for WWE, with him still in place as CEO, would have been a bigger impact on the business, because the company would have lost millions of pounds. So the fact that he's removed himself, that he's been replaced by Stephanie and Nick Khan, he's done that to protect WWE as a business, which makes all the sense in the world. Really, he's not the first person to do it, and he won't be the last person to do it. But yeah, it's just as purely. I personally believe it's to purely save the company money. Whatever comes from the allegations and stuff like that is a completely separate thing. But he's, to say, for a business point of view, he's done the right thing. He's protected WWE in removing himself. He's still a shareholder at the end of the day. He's still the majority shareholder. So it's not like he's still going to be getting paid every year, his share, like his whatever profits he gets. He's still going to get a cut of that. It's just this, I think, will more impact the product itself. And it's strange because this one thing has so many branches attached to it that it just has a weird ripple effect that it can affect this and this and this and this. And it's just a massive shock. And yeah, it's just, like I said, we were talking about SmackDown you were talking about SmackDown with it all being rewritten. And I texted you earlier and said that some of it was edited weirdly and some of it was out of place. So the bit I told you about was obviously the scene with Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce. Yeah. And Sonya saying to Pearce that the show is a muck, and Lacey Evans walks out of a match. But at that point, the Lacey Evans match hadn't happened. So it was just edited weird and misplaced wrong. And like I said, it's just a production thing. Like, it's not going to happen every week. It's just for the pure what happened hours before the show started, how it was being rewritten. But yeah, this is just going to have a massive ripple effect on WWE. But like I say again, he's done the right thing to protect WWE as a business.
Yeah, and I think you've worded that really, really well, I've got to say as well then. Like you say, obviously, WWE always comes first. And as you see there, like, you know, for him right now, obviously, whether... Go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, at the end of the day, he's done that because he's still going to get paid from WWE. So to protect his financial interest, he has to step away to have the minimal amount of impact to his financial gain from being a shareholder in WWE.
One of the key things I realised with some of the things you said at the start there as well was that WWE is like a baby to him, because obviously his children working amongst WWE, but he's also fired one of them this year. Shane McMahon was actually, you know, for the betterment of WWE, I'm getting Shane McMahon to go. So it's like you say, WWE always comes first in that matter. So completely understand. I want to say big thank you to the chat, by the way. There's a lot of questions come flying in, and don't worry, we will go to them. We will address those questions. So if you feel like, hang on, don't worry, we will going to come to them. They're not going to be ignored. But we just want to get through this initial reaction of the process and stuff. Then we'll go into the questions and see what everyone's got to say. And yeah, I mean, literally, I mean, as you said, there with the show being rewritten, obviously that maybe it's not going to be complete chaos like that, you know, going forward. Obviously, Brock walking out was a big issue with that at that particular point. Obviously, the decision with Vince and stuff, I think, had been made prior to this bit before, but the announcement was made with the idea of not crashing the stock market afterwards, like you said, on the financial side of things. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to be happening going forward with everything. But obviously, taking the Vince McMahon idea out just for the minute, I'm going to go here to Tina Time, who's in the chat with a question here for us. So it's a good time to bring this one up, I do believe. It says, what's up, guys? I really hope that changes come, but I don't expect them right away. Do you guys agree? Now, obviously, with the idea that Bruce Pritchard currently is involved as head of creative at this particular time for me. Screams the idea that the product will remain very similar. And obviously, we've got SummerSlam like a week away. Now, obviously, everything has to be rewritten last night with Brock not actually being on the show till, well, halfway through it, coming back. But obviously, you look at things and say, well, I think WWE will play it safe now between now and Nashville. What happens after that if we get a new head of creative? I think that's when there could be some changes. But how do you feel, Steve, about this?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Once I'm just opening a can of drink because I know my luck. I'm going to get dying thirst at some point. But yeah, I've sat there. Last 24 hours, I've sat there and thought the same thing. We're not going to see any major changes until after SummerSlam because SummerSlam is already basically pre-booked. They have what they need to do. They've got the majority of the matches on the card. There's already I think something like 6 or 7 matches, possibly maybe 1 or 2 more to be announced. I don't know, but yeah, we're not going to see anything. We wasn't going to see anything last night apart from Stephanie, obviously opening the show. We probably won't see anything Monday. It will be the Raw after SummerSlam because that's the point where they have to now look forward. They have to look forward to Clash at the Castle, which is obviously in September. I'm not too sure I don't think there actually is a pay-per-view before then, but obviously then SummerSlam, then onto Rumble, and then onto Mania. But yeah, like I said, the next week it will just be quite calm and everything. We're not going to see any major changes if we do until at least a Raw after SummerSlam.
I would agree with you. I mean, obviously, we haven't seen any announcements at this stage of what the case will be, as I say, but I mentioned Bruce Pritchard's name all along here. And obviously, Vince is going to have no say in everything. SmackDown, nothing was done when Vince McMahon involved. But obviously, these people obviously have been Vince people for a long time. I mentioned Bruce Pritchard, Kevin Dunn, for example. There's still was speculation on potentially their futures. Will there be any communication, any advice? I mean, I would be one to speculate on that if that would be a case in the short term. But obviously, if you get fresh voices in the creative room, that would be something that would be interesting. I'd want to have the talent would feel as well. Obviously, some have been, Vince McMahon guys or, girls for a very, very long time, depending on their stance. You look at perhaps someone like, Brock Lesnar who walked out, but obviously you look at other people that have been there for a long time. Someone like Randy Orton's been in the company 20 years. I wonder how he would feel about the situation. It's all he's ever known. It's going to be a big change. What will happen with the current talent pool roster as well? Do you think it's a positive reaction, or how do you reckon they're taking it?
This is what kind of scares me and excites me at the same time, because from a creative perspective, now that Vince isn't in charge, essentially the dog is off the leash. Anything can happen. The amount of times that we've heard of these stories that are then changed at the last minute because of Vince, don't get me wrong, we're probably going to get some awful stuff as well. But it wouldn't be WWE if you didn't have really good and really bad stuff.
Absolutely.
But for me, looking forward, if we can get Triple H in charge of creative on Raw and SmackDown and let him do what he did with the black and gold version of NXT, to me personally, the product would start to feel a lot like how AEW is currently run at the minute, whereas we won't get constant rematches over and over again. We won't get 14 weeks of the New Day versus Jinder and Shanky. Do you know what I mean? We won't get that. We'll get like I was talking to someone earlier about this, and it was like, you think of the Gargano Ciampa rivalry. They never touched each other. They weren't even in tag matches together or against each other until it got to those moments, those takeovers, and it just made them feel more special. So yeah, that's the one thing I'm really excited for, is that we might start to get like just a fresher look to it and not constant rematch after the Lacey Evans things from last night. I was just like, this is like the third week in a row they've come out, critique the crowd, and they don't have a match, and then she just goes, oh, so what's the point? I'm a big fan of Lacey Evans, but if you're just going to keep doing this with her, then I'm really losing interest in her, because I'm finding her more annoying than anything. I don't want to boo her. I just don't want to watch her. That's my problem. So the product just needs if we get a Triple H involved and we get this freshness brought back in. But this is what I mean. This could also spin off into other things, because there's a lot of guys on that roster that are Triple H guys. You look at your Kevin Owens, your Finn Balor. For years, we've been crying out for Finn Balor to be in a more prominent position on the top of the card. For Kevin Owens, me personally, I'm screaming for Kevin Owens to be a top guy again.
Yeah.
It will look like we will get a more interesting product instead of just Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar for the 14th millionth time. it just excites me at a fresher outlook. But then this also leads on to the fact that you imagine the amount of guys and girls that have been released from NXT and the roster over the years. Who's not to say if Triple H is back in charge of creative, we could get Adam Cole come back to the WWE because he's worked with Triple H in NXT and he knows what Triple H can do and how much enthusiasm and love of the product it does. If Adam Cole is then sitting in AEW and going, do you know what? I've had a great 3, 4, 5 years in AEW. Triple H is now in charge of WWE. I can go back there now, and I know that I'll have good creative because he's in charge of it. And it does, and this with everyone that's left. And it's, again, little things like name changes. But I know it probably won't happen. But the possibility that Gunther can go back to Water and have his classical music back, and we won't get these, like, we'll stop having Max Dupree and we'll just keep LA Knight and stuff. This is what excites me. But then I'm also worried that it's not going to happen, and I don't want to get my hopes up too soon and then burn the bridges, and then it just all comes tumbling down on me.
This is the thing. It comes down to the idea of who takes the creative control. Obviously, this is a big thing, I think, of what I want to say. Thing. Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing of what fans will care about long term, because that's the thing you're going to see on your TV screen every week. No one sees really what happens behind the scenes. Of course, we want a happy working environment for everyone. I think that goes without saying for everybody watching, for us here as well that's actually doing the podcast. But at the same time, like you say, the television product is probably what the key for us. So this idea of creative, who is going to get that creative control? What we're going to see? Like you said, we're being advertised now next week for SmackDown, Aaliyah versus Lacey Evans again. It's like they're actually going to finally fight next week. Well, they're meant to finally fight for the last 3 weeks. So we're going to believe it's going to happen next week. It's that idea of this booking, like you say. Are we still going to be stuck with the new vicious Viking Raiders? You know, we want to see, like you said, this different style of booking that we saw with the black and gold NXT. I think if that was brought to WWE, yeah, you could say maybe people weren't transitioned to Raw and SmackDown the way Vince wanted, but it's not going to matter what Vince wanted now. We're going to get what we could get with this new vision. But like you say, we shouldn't get our hopes up too much. We don't know quite what we're going to get. That person that's going to have the pencil is going to be key. But the possibilities of a new creative person in there with fresh ideas, fresh feelings, someone that's perhaps more in touch with the modern world, like, not to, nothing against who's there before, but obviously you turn around and say, look, these people have been doing it for 30 odd years, and it comes to a point where it says, well, that was what worked back in, say, 1985 or 1994 or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily work in 2022. We've seen this song and dance play out enough, and if the most creative thing you can come up is a championship contenders match, that's like you say, it's soiling the product massively. So to someone that can come in with fresh ideas, someone that's got an idea of what TikTok actually is, you know what I mean? Like those sort of people may come in with some ideas that will actually work with a new generation of fans, as well as keeping us entertained as a generation, and trying to evolve the product as well, rather than sort of saying, oh, we need to go back to TV 14 because we're going to bring back the attitude. No, we're not bringing back the attitude. The world is different. We're not going to get that again. That's not going to. And if you go back to it, yes, you can have your rosy tinted glasses. Sometimes I do, depending on what show I'm going back to watch for a retro review. But at the same time, you look and say it's good to have an evolved product, something that takes the best of the old, maybe a bit of swearing, maybe a good written story, but then bring it in fresh up and make it modern.
Reinvent the 24/7 title, go back to the hardcore title, because it would just make the belt a little bit more legit. Instead of everyone just getting rolled up 7 times in one show, let someone go ham with a steel chair on someone and just be like, and that's it. Have that done for the steel. Just make it more like unknown and less predictable. Like I said, we get one 24/7 product, and it's like most of the time you can guarantee the person who walked out with the 24/7 title is going to walk back out of it again. We're going to get 4 roll-up pins that are just like, if they was even having a normal match, you'd never see a roll-up pin that quick in a match, and it kind of kills the product for me with that 24/7 title. But then as well, the women's division, like, we obviously Sasha and Naomi, whatever their status is, depending on who's in charge now, especially as certain people like John Laurinaitis are no longer in the company, is there a possibility they might want to come back now because someone, like you said, someone who's holding the pencil is completely different to what it was. The tag team division might actually get a bit more depth and like involvement to it. And we don't just get these thrown together teams that every week that are fighting for a tag team title that essentially doesn't mean anything on the product.
Absolutely.
The women's division, I think the women's division will massively improve from 2-minute matches now that someone else is holding the pencil.
I hope so. I really do. I'm a big fan and advocate of women's wrestling. And like you say, it had a real boom period in the middle of the 10s. It seems to have, it's still strong now, but it's not as strong as what it was a couple of years ago. And I think, like you said, everything now seems to be rolled around championships. There's not really storylines, and there seems to be that real blockage in creative booking for the women's division. So, like you say, that could be something that could be really, really good. I want to go through some of the chat because obviously we could fall very, very behind that, and lots of comments have come flying in. Tino's time does say that he thought Vince would die in the chair during WrestleMania's main event, maybe Fury winning the WWE title. I mean, we thought he'd be there till his last breath, and obviously we'll have to wait and see if Fury would win a championship at WrestleMania. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see down there. But Getcho is in the house, so what's good? Hope you're doing well. Also, thank you for checking out the stream. You mentioned Naomi and Sasha just a moment ago. Martin Creer saying that ever since the Naomi and Sasha walkout, WWE has went into big corporate decisions this year. How crazy has these WWE changes have? Sorry, let's read that again. How crazy has these WWE changes have made you both thought throughout all of it? So how have you been thinking throughout all these changes? Have you felt yourself that, like, you know, big things like this could be coming, I guess?
I've said for a little while now, even before all this stuff come out with Vince, that he's such an intriguing character that, like, I thought something like this would happen eventually when Vince would die, and you would eventually get these kinds of stories come out. I was never expecting it to come out while he was still in power, while he was still alive. And like I said, when the initial report come out and it was like he's being investigated, it's like, it's, let's be honest, he's not the only person that owns a business that's a millionaire or billionaire that's done this kind of thing before. But I think because he's such, it's not like he's a CEO that, like, you could think of a half a dozen of the biggest companies in the world. I can tell you the CEO. I don't know their names. But the fact that I know Vince McMahon is the CEO and he's such a big character that I think it hits more because everyone knows who he is. Everyone knows he's the CEO. Everyone knows he's the chairman. Everyone knows he owns the company. And then you get stuff like this come out, and then obviously top that on with stuff like Sasha and Naomi walking out because they're sick of the booking. It just feels like it's like someone's tipped a domino, and it's just got bigger and bigger and bigger as it's gone. And like, I'm sitting here trying to think what the first domino was. Maybe it was Sasha and Naomi walking out, because that's when the John Laurinaitis stuff come out, and then that's when all the allegation stuff started coming out, and then that's when all this hush money stuff gets. It's a strange domino effect that I honestly, like, I don't think anyone would expect it to have seen.
Absolutely. I mean, it's gone on even to podcasts. You know, I think it was Cafe de Rene. I don't know if you've seen that podcast with Rene Dupree. No, it had Paul London on the show. They were talking about Ashley Mazzara, of course, no longer with us, sadly, also. So claim seemed to be looked like an allegation or some sort of claim could be made on that podcast. Again, I'll take the link of that and we'll drop it in the comments at the end of this video. But like you look and say, like you said, there's so much of where these sort of red flags come. I mean, the thing is, it's interesting as well. Vince did his first interview for like 15 years, didn't he, on the Pat McAfee show earlier this year. And that was that you sort of think, well, Vince doesn't do that sort of thing. Was that looking to do good PR? When you look back now, like a few months later, like the situation, you start asking yourself different questions that perhaps maybe you wouldn't have thought of twice before. You know, you think, oh, we're getting this interview, we get a bit of inside. Like you said, Vince is a fascinating character, someone you want to listen to, someone that perhaps maybe, I don't know, it might have inspired some people to listen to some of the you know, a billionaire that's sort of, you know, big wrestling company that we've all followed for many, many years, and to get the inside mind of that. But obviously to learn these things, you know, a period later, like you say, it's been one thing after another. I mean, wrestling news this year has been absolutely insane, to be fair. The amount of things we've come and talked about this year that I literally thought we'd probably never talk about has been absolutely crazy. And it's, I mean, you just don't know where it's going to stop. But like you say, it's been non-stop the whole way through.
Do you know what? I was just thinking while you was talking there, and I actually know the reason why I thought that all these stories would come out about Vince McMahon, and it was Dark Side of the Ring for me, because I've watched the first 2 seasons of that, and it was the It was the Jimmy Snuka one I watched, when they talk about him killing his or murdering his ex-wife, ex-girlfriend, whatever it was. And they turned around, and the people they interviewed turned around and basically said Vince walked in with a briefcase full of cash and Jimmy Snuka walked out the door, and it was never talked about again. And I sat there and thought to myself at that point, man, there's so much stuff that's going to come out about Vince when he passes away. When he dies, there is going to be so many stories like that kind of thing that are going to come out. And yeah, it's just like I said, that Dark Side of the Ring really couldn't have helped Vince McMahon at this point, because then you had stuff like the plane ride from hell and how that was all talked about and everything that led from that. And it's amazing how one documentary has got so many people talking about what goes on behind the scenes in WWE. Like, yes, we always knew about the dirt sheets and stuff, but then when you hear these sort of untold stories from like people like you wouldn't know, like to say, especially with the plane ride from hell, when they interviewed one of the air stewardesses, and it's like the plane ride from hell was like what 25, 30 years ago, and we're only just hearing this stuff now, and it's like it's really crazy the way that they say the last year, like you said, the last year, there's just been so many talking points to do with wrestling and WWE and Vince McMahon himself.
Absolutely. I mean, Dark Side of the Ring is a fantastic mention, because it's no surprise it's not on for a fourth season. Listen, didn't WWE have a Vice show themselves that
I think they've done a deal with the creators of Dark Side of the Ring. I think they were supposed to be working together. So they were supposed to have, like, I don't know, footage that's not been seen before that they could use for production. But yeah, as far as I know, there was no fourth season planned. But what happens with that is it's very strange. It will be very strange to see what happens.
Absolutely indeed, there. Absolutely indeed. Numiko was saying that some fans on Twitter claim that WWE should go back to the black and gold era of NXT. As much as I love the nostalgia and I enjoy watching, but I enjoy watching NXT 2.0. So there's no need for more indie wrestlers in WWE. That's an interesting take on it. Look, I'm going to say first off, I think NXT 2.0 and black and gold combined in some format, I think could make the perfect blend, because I think that perhaps there wasn't enough characters. I like that NXT 2.0 presents those characters. Some of them are standing out quite strong, and I think they've got some bright futures ahead of them. But if you look at the actual booking of black and gold, it was quite simple but effective, a lot of their booking. We got some of the greatest storylines with ease in the last decade, perhaps even time as watching as a wrestling fan. You go to mention Gargano and Ciampa, that is the modern day, Shakespeare of wrestling stories. The way that was put together, it was absolutely magical from start to finish. The only thing maybe you could argue is that is it really conclusively finished? I mean, I think Gargano actually recently said, sounded in an interview somewhere, that that feud will never be finished. So I mean, it's interesting to see. What's your take on this? I mean, obviously we mentioned before that's what we'd want to see, but obviously the mention of indie wrestlers there, I think, is quite key in that quote as well. So because it doesn't necessarily need to be indie wrestlers, but if it's got the great booking, regardless of what wrestler it is, it would make a better future.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, 2.0, I have honestly, I've reduced myself. I used to watch it all the time when Black and Gold was on, and then when it changed to 2.0, I still used to watch it. But for me, I've reduced myself to the YouTube clips, because it's really turned a lot like Raw and SmackDown, where it's just repeat after repeat after repeat with some of it. And then my actual problem with NXT 2.0 is that instead of gradually introducing new people every week, there'll be like 5 new people on the show, and it's like I'm barely keeping up with the last 15 you've introduced over the last 3 weeks. But then the good thing that the black and gold did as well was it was obviously pre-recorded. It was done 3 weeks and like on the spin, so like they used to get enough time to sort of practice the show, practice what was going to happen. They did record the 3 weeks, and there ain't going to be another recording for another 3 weeks. So that's what was so perfect about 2.0. And then when it went live, it just sort of, even Black and Gold when it went live was still good, but yeah, for 2.0 for me, it's fallen. It's not what it's just. It's too many people too soon. Like, and I think they've shot themselves in the foot, because some of the character work as well. It's like, I'm sure one of the female wrestlers is just a maths teacher or something, and I'm like, how am I supposed to get involved in a maths teacher becoming a wrestler? It's not. Like, and there you go. And like, what did I text you the other day about the women's tag team division? And they had literally had a battle royal with 20 female superstars, and yet they've not apparently not yet scrapped the NXT women's tag team titles, but that's what it felt like. And you've got 20 women wrestlers on that show apparently, and it's like, I didn't realize NXT 2.0 had 20 female wrestlers on it, and like that's what shocked me more than anything. But like I said, yeah, a nice blend between the two of them would be great. But that's why, for me personally, I feel it needs to be someone like Triple H, because Triple H knows the modern day product. He knows like he gets what he, especially like I know with Vince, it was just a business thing. With Triple H, he is a wrestler. He understands from a wrestler's point of view, storytelling and all this kind of stuff. So this is why this creative needs to be someone who knows the business inside and out. You can't go and hire someone that's done TV work because they're writing for a soap opera, and it's fine writing for a soap opera because you can cut, edit, re-record, and all this kind of stuff. This is a live product, so the writing for it needs to be perfect when it goes out to a live audience.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you said, there's no retakes on it if it doesn't kind of work out the way you want it to. So
this ain't no Sid Justice where it's like, can I start again? No, it ain't that.
Classic. Yeah, no, of course. And like you said, there with the idea of the 2.0, like you say, it has its advantages, but also Black and Gold has its advantages the way it did things. I'd say I think a perfect blend of the two. Like this, if you've got the right storyline that goes in place. I mean, obviously, I'm not advocating we should push almost to the main event, but he's no indie guy. We've got these people that have come through that if they're pushed right and they're given a good story to can go with, maybe there's a reason to get behind them or reason to fear them or want them to lose. Like that's the key, and it's the reason to care, to feel that emotion. And I think if you've got that to go with some good characters as well, which 2.0, I will say, does actually have quite a few good ones. There are some that are not.
Yeah,
that has some. It doesn't. Some of them have completely flopped as well. It's not a perfect show, but like you said, with wrestling, it's not good. It's going to have good and bad. Do you know what I mean? We've got a bit of everything. So I suppose it's just to wait and see how it's going to play out. But I mean, the head of creative, who it will be very, very key. And like I said, the fact that they wouldn't have to answer to a Vince McMahon anymore does, I mean, give a lot more potential and potentially freedom and ideas of things you can do. You can actually make Raw and SmackDown one show again, or you can make it where they really are separate brands. You can do something where Raw has factions and SmackDown is the one with the indie talent, and one is more of the real combat sports stars and with the celebrities and stuff. How WWE wants to play it, they can actually make the shows unique and different, and a reason why, yeah, okay, maybe you might want to watch one more than the other, but isn't that good rather than thinking, saying, I'm seeing the same bland TV show for 5 hours every single week?
Yeah, exactly. But then this is where, again, we're going back to this creative narrative that you can't have mixed writers for both the shows. You've got to have a consistent writing team for both shows, because if you want both shows to succeed, then it needs to be written by the same people. You can't have Raw having like these fantastic writers and SmackDown becoming an absolute deadbeat show, especially when they're getting paid like $1 billion by Fox to run SmackDown and the creative is terrible. It needs to be a consistently good writing team that know the product, that will actually speak to the wrestlers and get involved. Because I know you hear the stories that the creative team don't actually speak to the wrestlers. They just write this stuff and hand it to them and they say, there, go out and do it. But like whatever it is, it just needs to be. It needs to go back to being a pro wrestling show and not a TV drama. Because most of the time, I feel with Raw SmackDown 2.0 is they're just building them to pay-per-views. The wrestling isn't as good as what you're going to get on the pay-per-view, which is fine. I understand it, but I still, on the occasion, would like to see some good wrestling. I don't want to see who was on SmackDown last night. It was a women's match on there. Raquel Gonzalez or Raquel Rodriguez versus Sonya Deville. It's like a 3-minute match. And it's like, it's a 2-hour show, and you're telling me you've put on a 3-minute women's match. It's just not intriguing at all. Like I texted you, didn't I? And I was talking about the commercial breaks and stuff, and that going into the main event. Why are you having commercial breaks in your main event? It's the main event of the show. There should be no commercial breaks. It should be a case of there's going to be no breaks until this finishes, kind of stuff. Like they used to do it. And like I said to you, I'd rather go with 10 30-second commercial breaks throughout the hour than 1 5-minute commercial break, because it honestly kills the pacing of the show for me. I'd rather, because like you said, you get into a main event like people still know AJ Styles from Raw. He comes out, I think it was last week, whatever week it was. He comes out, he gets his intro, then they go to a commercial break, then they come back, then they cut to a video package, then they cut to a backstage segment, then they go to another commercial break, and then they cut back to AJ. So at this point, he's been standing in the ring for 10 minutes doing absolutely nothing. So what is the point?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with a lot of that, and obviously, like you said there, like especially when it comes to a main event, it's what your show's built around. If you keep getting rid of these adverts, so you get these sort of like different parts. Some matches go free, like free segments of a show, 2 commercial breaks, but usually it's more than not, it's 2. You have the first segment, which is like the opening act, then you get the advert, and when you think about it, by the time you get back from the advert, you kind of think, well, hang on, not I've forgotten what's happened, but you're out of it. You're not into the same story. It's almost like you don't need to come into the story until the final part of the act. Like if you have like this where the build happens, we've got through the rest locks and the feeling out process. That part doesn't matter, and that kills some of the story intrigue of what pro wrestling is, because it's supposed to have a start and a middle and end. It's a 3-act part, and you're meant to care about everything. TV, like you say, it's just about to get to the next bit as quick as possible, and that has its advantages, but for me, it's a major disconnect, especially like you say, when the adverts could be in different placements in the Attitude Era, as people say, go with the rosy tinted glasses. Very rarely did you have adverts in matches. Sometimes matches had to be 2 minutes long because they had to go to commercial break, but then at least you got everything.
Yeah, but then this is why Black and Gold wasn't perfect, because this is where I first started hating. This was Black and Gold always used to go to a commercial break about 2 minutes into the main event, and used to do my brain in, because it would just be, yep, you've killed the momentum now, and I've got to come back and then get reinvested in the product again. Like, I know that obviously they've only been doing rest hold for 2 minutes, or even maybe not. Sometimes they actually do some pretty cool stuff during the commercial break, but you miss it. So that's what I'm saying. If you have a 5-minute commercial break 2 minutes into the start of your main event, I would rather take 3 30-second commercial breaks during your main event, because it doesn't take my attention away that much, because I know, all right, I've only got to watch this advert for 30 seconds and it's going to be back again. Whereas like over here, I watch it on BT Sport and it's like commercial break. I'm sitting there watching commercials for a cricket and a rugby game. Honestly, I don't care about, but I'm going to sit and watch it for 5 minutes before I get back into the show again. It really did used to do my brain in.
Absolutely. I want to know, because obviously we have a lot of American viewers watching. Obviously, the picture-in-picture I know is evolved with NXT a lot. Do you still watch the sort of small screen, or do you watch the big screen with your takeaway adverts and stuff like that? I'd be interested with the American viewers if that's something that still disconnects them with watching that, or if they actually are still heavily invested to see the small screen and they're still happy with that part of the product. Because then I think that could be a way around commercials. But we'll move on in the meantime. Noob, that's a very loaded question. We could have spoken and done a whole podcast on our own with that question alone, seriously. And this one could do just the same. Martin Carrillo saying, some fans stating that thanks to Tony Khan and AEW, Vince retired. I think this is a terrible take and bad taste of the situation. What are your opinions? Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not true for starters. It's nothing to do with Tony Khan, nothing to do with AEW. Anyone that even suggests that, I think needs to have a look in the mirror and actually see if they can count to 10 to begin with. But obviously the tweet from Tony Khan that came out yesterday as well, it's supposed to be, I guess, ironic. It's supposed to be a bit of comedy, but at the same time, I don't know. For me, there's the right place and the right time to do things like this. And obviously, the situation with Vince McMahon, like we say, it's not a simple case of he's just, there are allegations around there. I don't think that this was the right time for Tony Khan to put out a tweet saying about being the longest CEO, especially when there's other companies with them, like Impact Wrestling and other companies. But so what's your take on everything?
Yeah, I didn't like the tweet. I thought it was distasteful, and like I said, it was almost like it was tweeted by a character rather than a CEO of a business. Like, at the end of the day, it's probably because of Vince McMahon, Tony Khan got into wrestling, and that's the reason why he decided to start his own wrestling company, because obviously he used to watch. He probably did watch WWE back in the day, and it was because of Vince McMahon. He's got this love for pro wrestling. So to sit there and mock him like half an hour after he's decided to retire, I just thought it was really distasteful. I would have much more appreciated if he'd come out and said his thanks, really, because, yeah, like I said, I have to say thank you to Vince McMahon, because if it wasn't for Vince McMahon, I wouldn't be into wrestling. Do you know what I mean? I remember as a 5-6-year-old kid, and as soon as I heard that unstable theme tune from the Ultimate Warrior, I lost my nut as a 6-year-old kid, man.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Warrior was always like, so Warrior was the one that got me into wrestling, because he just excited me. And, you know what I mean? He got me going. And I presume Tony Khan was exactly the same. He probably had someone like a Hogan or an Andre or a Warrior that, like me, he got goosebumps from it. And I really didn't appreciate it. I just thought it was really distasteful, and it was such a character tweet. And it was like, I know Tony Khan's used to doing them, but it was just not the right time, especially with the allegations against McMahon. And like I said, they're probably the reasons why he stepped down to protect his business. I just thought, not good at all.
No, Joe, you answered that so perfectly. And like you say there, we do have to be thankful, because we all wouldn't be here liking wrestling the way we did without the way Vince McMahon has done things. My only personal opinion, I say there'll be a time and a place of where perhaps we should be thankful. I'm not sure if today is the day to turn around and say open thanks with all these allegations going on. Maybe a different day I can look back and I can say, Joe, I'm really thankful for this. And there's, you go back through Austin McMahon, for example. I said we mentioned a few things in this, some of the best ones. That's the biggest storyline ever that made WWE win the war. That's what made them do it. It was Vince McMahon himself in a rivalry with Steve Austin that went on for about 3 or 4 years. The second that he brought up with WCW and ECW, that storyline finished. It wasn't a thing anymore because they didn't need to do it anymore. So, I mean, they won the war with that feud. But obviously, you mentioned about the Ultimate Warrior. Yeah, same thing. I mean, like, just a completely uninteresting story for everybody. Please keep with me. But I remember going on holiday as a kid, and like you said, that used to be really hyped. And I remember one time being like a kids club, and like you could have like your face painted, and everyone would do like Spider-Mans and all the sort of stuff like that. And obviously, pro wrestling, we get into like the mid-90s where the scandal was going on about the steroid scandal for Vince McMahon, who overcame that, by the way, in 94 or whatever. And I remember being said, like, you can have your face painted, and wrestling wasn't the coolest thing. But it's like, do you know the Ultimate Warrior? And they were like, yeah. And I actually managed to get a warrior face. I haven't had all these different things. There was me as the one wrestling fan that got that. So, yeah, if anyone did appreciate that, God bless you. But at the same time, like, you sit there and say, like, there are times we've been infused and understood the characters, understand the feelings and the emotions, and perhaps we may have grown up at a good time of wrestling as well. Like you said, they have the appreciation of the Ultimate Warrior, learning the good work rate as well, the likes of Bret Hart, Mr. Perfect, Shawn Michaels, seeing that work rate, realize the dream as well, the boyhood dream comes true, to move on to the Attitude Era and have those big, large line of characters. How lucky we were to have Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Undertaker, Kane, Mankind, all at the same time on the same roster that could have been a champion at any time. Like, yeah, literally, you mentioned there about Tony Khan as well. To be fair, like you said, was he watching? Yeah, I mean, Raw 1000 was 10 years ago today, by the way. That's a 10-year anniversary today. Yeah. CM Punk was a world champion who turned heel on The Rock on that show. If he's the big CM Punk mark that he claims he is, and giving all love for CM Punk, of course he was well in when there was the pipe bomb going on, Money in the Bank 2011, all a brainchild of what Vince McMahon was. Yeah, for me, with Tony Khan coming back into relation to the question, I'm finally getting there. Yeah, it was distasteful. It was the wrong time to do such a thing like that. And personally, under the circumstances, I think it should have just been avoided altogether.
Yeah, I mean, every generation's different, but I think we were really blessed to watch the Attitude Era, because it was at the time. This is when Raw used to get SummerSlam-sized crowds. Like Raws would get 60,000 people, and it used to be so exciting watching. It was so unpredicted. I mean, yes, all right, we look back at it now and we're like, oh my god, bra and panties matches, and it's like, yeah, well, back then we were 13-year-old kids and we loved all that kind of stuff, but now it's all distasteful. But you look at the wrestlers that are around today, and you've got to say that most of them were probably influenced by a lot of the Attitude Era, sort of maybe new era wrestlers like your Hogans and your Warriors, and then your Rocks and your Stone Colds and your do you know what I mean? Most of them around here have probably been, like, say, because of these people, because of the product that Vince McMahon put on, most of them are wrestlers today because of it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they all have their influences. Obviously, we know the likes of, especially with Ruthless Aggression Era, Eddie Guerrero having such a big, say on the likes. We mentioned Sasha Banks already in this video, and she sort of idolized, and a lot of people do. So, obviously, we mentioned as well the NXT Tag Team titles, by the way. Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez were Team 2001. So, I mean, it's starting to go a little bit now. I think a lot of them may start to go where we're probably a couple of years away from the people coming in now that would be all about the PG era and stuff. But I suppose that's a different topic for a different day. But yeah, bad taste, we think, personally, on that, and also with the tweet from Tony Khan. But another question coming from Martin, also an interesting question, is who makes the final decisions on a corporate position standpoint in the company, Stephanie or maybe Nick Khan? I personally think that Nick Khan personally will seemingly have the more power of the two. That's from the understandings of what I got anyway from Tom Colohue's stream yesterday. That was the name he suggested of those two. But Steve, what would be your take on it?
I don't think either of these two are going to have any input whatsoever over the creative going forward for this business. These Nick Khan especially, he's been brought in to just basically cut away the fat and make WWE as big a profitable company as possible. Stephanie may be more involved in the product, but I think these two are just purely come in to run the business. I think they will create a role like head of creative or something for the product going forward, because I can't believe Nick Khan is a massive wrestling fan. I've seen interviews with him before, and he honestly seems like he doesn't care for the product. He is just a businessman at the end of the day. Whereas Stephanie, she's been in and around it most of her life, or in fact all of her life really. So She may have some sort of creative input, but I very much couldn't see that. I think this will just be someone else's job that will be paid to done. So say whether it's a Triple H or a Bruce Pritchard or a Kevin Dunn, who knows? But yeah, I think that going forward, the creative aspect will be completely different and won't involve these two.
Yeah, I mean, creatively, I have to agree. Corporate, though, I think obviously Nick Khan has a lot to do. And this is where I think, obviously, with a lot of superstars, we're going to come to a question in a minute to do with superstars. So, Mike, Tanhabs Mike, who's joined the stream as well, thank you. Going to start actually answering that. In fact, I'll bring it up and we can just merge the two together. Do we see Triple H trying to get guys like Killer Cross, Johnny Gargano, Dakota Kai, others that Vince let go? Obviously, Johnny Gargano's contract ran out. Obviously, you mentioned Adam Cole earlier, his contract ran out. He chose to go. But guys like Killer Cross or Karrion Cross, Dakota Kai were let go. Well, I mean, obviously, Nick Khan had the big decision on a lot of those. Nick Khan was the one that released a lot of those. Nick Khan is a big reason of why some of the promotional stuff we saw. Obviously, the zombie thing that everyone hated last year at WrestleMania Backlash. Was it last year? Probably last year. Everyone hated the Red Notice stuff at Survivor Series. I mean, I was probably one of 6 people I think had seen the movie before Survivor Series, so I totally got everything that was going on. But I understand why a lot of people didn't like that, because if I hadn't seen it, I don't know what's going on as well. But obviously, with all this sort of stuff, like Nick Khan has had a big influence on that stuff. And if it's a corporate and it involves money, Nick Khan obviously has been involved with a lot of the budget cuts, involved with a lot of these sort of decisions going on. So I think corporately, Nick Khan could be the one that would have a lot of say. But from a creative standpoint, I think Stephanie has that wrestling influence. And I think that's why they could make a good team at the top.
Exactly, because it's not down to one person now; it's down to 2 people. So it will involve the 2 of them getting along. So they will have to speak to each other and make these kinds of decisions. As for this question here, and whether the wrestlers, if Triple H took over, Johnny Gargano would be back tomorrow, I would say. But for stuff like this, you're not going to see any of these kinds of names re-sign. I would say for at least maybe 6 months. Probably a minimum, because a lot of the people that are no longer part of the company will want to see, 1, who's in charge of it, who's in charge of their creative, 2, if there's a spot for them, really, because I can't imagine a lot of them will want to come back if there isn't a spot for them to fit in. And then 3, depending on what the money's like I can imagine there will be a massive restructure as well when it comes to contracts and stuff now. Especially with stuff like third parties like Twitch and Cameo and all that kind of stuff. I said it'll be this again. This goes back to this whole branching off thing. It's going to be I think a massive restructuring now on how they do their deals for their wrestlers and stuff like that. Like they used to do their guarantees before. Well, they still do their guarantees, and how much they get is crazy money. But yeah, like I said, with Nick Khan in charge, there was going to be a whole reshape on how and when and how much these people get paid if they are re-signed.
I think you make a great point with that, especially with the idea of, as you mentioned, like I said, from the corporate business side, the idea of the Twitches and Cameos and stuff like that, stuff that's been heavily impacted as well. Those have been definitely probably, I would imagine, Nick Khan heavy based decisions. But you mentioned then the idea, obviously, a lot of people that have been let go, some that could be brought back. Obviously, yeah, some like Triple H, obviously now head of the talent relations, could say, look, we've got a spot for this person, we could make it work. That could be fine. But the thing is, as well, we've got small knit rosters now. Everyone actually seems to get TV time. Shanky's dancing every week. We get to see it. We've got the new Vicious Viking. Like, would they get their TV time if certain people come out and were pushed higher up? I'm not so sure. So this is why I'm not convinced by that this will happen. But of course, like you said, maybe 6 months, a year down the line, I think it's probably a case of wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, your best bet is probably going to be after Mania. I think they want to get through the rest of this financial year, get through to Mania. And then see where it goes from there and see what the direction is, how the product's doing. Essentially, just do like a 12-month review or a 8-month review, or however long it is till Mania now. Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens. I mean, yes, we get to see Shanky dancing on SmackDown every week. I love that.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. I just maybe again, this all comes back to how the show's written and stuff like this. But I remember the Attitude Era doing what Black and Gold used to do, and you wouldn't see certain wrestlers for 2 weeks, and it made you almost like, it made the heart grow. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. So I think even if they were to bring more wrestlers in, I'd be fine with not seeing Shanky dance for 2 weeks. I'm sure I could live with that.
Are you sure? Because I mean, like, you know, we're depriving a lot of people of the. But no, I'm sure. By the way, very quickly, I'm sure most people were screaming back at the screen when I said, well, "Shanky gets some TV time." Like, everyone's like, "We don't need to see Shanky." I'm sure many were doing that. But I mean, at the end of the day, these people, they're living their dreams. They've got a job, and that's their creative direction currently. Maybe he might get something different. He might be, like I said, it all comes down to that creative, that story. Maybe something will be twisted, will make it better, and maybe we'll want to see a Shanky on the screens every week. I don't know, but I mean, Shanky's probably not the best example.
But if I want to see Shanky on my screen, I want to see him wrestle. I don't want to see him dance. It's a wrestling show at the end of the day, and that's what I want to see him do. And if there was even a remotely a story related as to why he dances all the time, no, just 1 week, suddenly Jinder decides to go looking for Shanky, and he's in a broom closet dancing for some apparent reason, and that's it. He's not stopped dancing since. I mean, there was the awkward 2 weeks when he was trying it on with a ring announcer, and it was just like, yeah, that's just really awkward, and I don't want to see that anymore. And now every week I see him wrestle for about 30 seconds. It's like, all right, see you later, Shanky. See you next week when you come back doing the same thing again. It's the same as what Lacey Evans is doing.
To be fair, I've spoke more about Shanky in this podcast than I have on any other podcast. We're almost right. I should almost add into the thumbnail at this point. Actually, you might find that in the morning. Shanky's just creeping in the thumbnail. Keep an eye out for it. But Martin Carrillo here since we're probably in the new era with Stephanie, Triple H, and Nick Khan after SummerSlam, wouldn't it now be the perfect time to start the draft? Well, I'm going to give a quick take on that, Steve, before, if you don't mind, just because of the fact we don't have that new head of creative in place yet. If they're put in place that quickly, they may want to get a feel of what the roster looks like. They may have their ideas in place. It could work out. It could be that way. But obviously, with the idea of the draft usually being in October, say someone comes in just after SummerSlam, they might want to get an idea of how they want to shape the roster together to make the plans to go for Royal Rumble, WrestleMania. This stuff wouldn't necessarily come overnight. Obviously, some people have maybe had to come up with some storylines quite quickly with certain superstars, which would be great. But obviously, we've got to fill whole cards out for a whole show for a calendar year. So it's trying to find the perfect blend for both rosters. So for me personally, I would say that October still would be the right time to do it.
For me, hopefully someone as part of creative will now turn around and go, the draft doesn't make sense a month before Survivor Series.
Yeah.
And turn around and go, oh, yes, let's swap the rosters around and then promote brand loyalty when they've only been here 4 weeks. They should use the draft as a product after Survivor Series, where if you lose at Survivor Series, I'm going to trade you to the other show because you've done nothing for my product. You cost me at Survivor Series. You cost me the brand supremacy. That it should be made a bigger deal, and it should have reason behind it, not just because, I want to freshen up the roster 4 weeks before we have the brand versus brand show. It just doesn't make sense.
Do you know what? I love that idea, and especially with the idea as well with that December usually I don't think is WWE's strongest month of business. So obviously and now there's no premium live event in December either for last year. Looks like there won't be this year either. That would be a great time to do it because obviously you kind of have this it's an important week of WWE. You must tune in for Fox and USA because we've actually got the draft taking place here. You've got this fresh start then with obviously Christmas. You have the couple of weeks where people got to fill themselves into the roster, or maybe it comes into effect from the start of January, and then that point on which right, okay, we're on the road to the Royal Rumble, road to WrestleMania, all fresh beginnings, all new. What will happen? Everything feels fresh, even going into WrestleMania, and you build that big storyline that starts there and can build its way out, blow off at Mania, and then you've got a chance to build something up big for the summer. Then you get towards, like you said, Survivor Series again, and then boom, off we go. We start the cycle again. I think that can make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is an alternative, and this is just something for me that I have creatively wanted to see in WWE for many, many years. I've done it on countless videos over the last 6 years that I've been doing this, is I would like to see a place where we don't have a WWE draft eventually. I know that people would say, well, that doesn't make sense because draft week brings in ratings. It does, but do you know what would be really exciting creatively in WWE is if you didn't have a draft, and if someone didn't have a spot in there, you'd find a place for them on the other show. Maybe they would defect to the other show. Maybe you have someone that does a beatdown angle backstage. Who was it? Don't know who it is. You don't see it coming because it's someone coming over from the other show, as long as Sean Ross Sapp isn't on the end of the phone trying to find out who it is. At the same time, if you can get that stuff where you can make it work, you can have people swapping shows, not necessarily all the time because you would water it down, but you could make it like the Monday Night War, working up in WWE and WCW, but actually in WWE, where they kind of are competitive against each other. The idea we want our show to be better than the other. Actually have a Raw GM and a SmackDown GM. I know people don't like them, but I think they make sense.
Make NXT a bigger deal than what it is. Bring it back to 2019 where it was part of Survivor Series and stuff like that. And that's 2 hours of TV that you can do something with. Have like I know they've been doing it recently with like Dolph Ziggler and now Apollo Crews has gone back there and stuff like that. But have more interaction, especially with the fact that they've got so much talent over there. I'm not being funny. Half of that young talent could do with working the likes of Charlotte Flair, even if they lose, putting them on, having a Charlotte come over to NXT, beating I don't know Nikita Lyons or whatever in a wrestling match. Like I just, and especially where they were in that small arena, that impact, that small enclosed crowd. It make NXT more watchable because you're going to be like, right, well, who's going to come from Raw and SmackDown this week? It would make NXT 2.0 a more watchable product. And it would get people saying, oh, no, I need to watch 2.0 because I want to see who's coming over from Raw and SmackDown. Don't just do it as like a one person comes over for 4 weeks, has a title match, loses, and then goes back again. Have someone come in every week and just make NXT 2.0 matter again. It's essentially your third brand. Like, I know they're starting to do it a lot with NXT UK as well. Like, I know that the two guys in 2.0 have the UK Tag Championships, and they're starting to do this inter-brand stuff. And that's one thing I've completely even forgot about is UK. Like, now, I know Triple H is I don't know who the creative team over is in the UK team now, but like hopefully we can get some sort of interaction with the UK side of it as well and get them guys involved more and get them fly over and do it. Just be the possibilities are endless for WWE at this moment.
So no, I believe Shawn Michaels is still involved with the NXT UK creative, but I must admit I very rarely watch NXT UK these days, so that's why I find it a bit difficult to know everything going on. But so we're going to go through the questions still that we've got, and we will finish off this stream probably when we get through the questions to give a final take on Vince McMahon and just our last thoughts on that. So probably we'll probably look to see how many questions we've got. We've got quite a few questions in, so we will be going for quite a while by the look of it. But we will power through them. Tanner Habs Mike saying WWE, if they go back to TV 14, all they have to do is book their shows. Added comment here, exactly like how Triple H booked the Black and Gold in NXT. It doesn't need the sexual overtones, and blood can be saved for the odd time. Totally agree with that comment.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but 2.0's female division is really overly sexualized at the minute, and whether that's going to hopefully change going, well, it should change going forward, really, because it shouldn't be on the TV like that. But like I said, you're not going to get whoever said it was like 15 Mandy Roses now in NXT, and hopefully their characters can be more thought of, because the unique ones that are there are the ones that don't look all the same. So your Cora Jade, your Kaylee Ray, your Nikita Lyons, like all the your Roxy, these all look like different people, whereas the rest of them, your Tiffany Strattons and all those, they all look the same. And it's just, I say, hopefully they can do that. Yes, that's to do with the over-sexual tones. The blood, if you go back to TV 14, yes, this can allow much more interesting dynamics with TV and creative. Like, we can have DQs for the sake of someone. Well, I know it's no Bret Hart Stone Cold. Bret Hart Stone Cold, where he bleeds out and passes out. But yeah, it would just be, it will make it more of a gritty and edgier product. Which, let's be honest, a lot of the fans nowadays have probably grown up through the ruthless aggression era and all that kind of stuff. So they've all grown up now, and I think it just needs to move with the times and with the fans that they've gained over the last 20 years.
And the thing is, obviously, with being a family product, obviously they will affect their sponsorships. They may affect their relationship with the charities. This is where I kind of feel a little bit with the idea of the blood idea, and obviously with going for the full TV 14, you can do things still very creatively amongst without being the TV 14. But like you say, on the rare occasions, the occasions you save it for, you can actually make it work really, really well. But even if it's like the third hour of Raw. Speaking of which, Lisa Stansbury says that 3 hours Raw need to go. Completely agree. Prefer it too. Much easier.
Yeah, it would be easy to digest, but then again, they might change it now and now if the product's more exciting, that they might need they're going to need the third hour to get much more of an exciting product, and maybe the third hour becomes the best hour on Raw now. Hopefully, they change the whole viewership brand, and it goes from, I don't know, whatever the views are a minute, 1 million in hour 1 to 1.5 million in 2 to 2 million in the third hour. It's just, again, it comes back to this whole creative idea and where it goes and how they book it.
Absolutely. Tino actually says he agrees with that. Would like it within a 30-minute cut. 2 hours 30 would be perfect for the show, in his opinion. So there you go. That's his take on that. We've got a list of prediction as well. Cody Rhodes returning at the Royal Rumble, and it being Roman Reigns versus Cody, the biggest match of WrestleMania match, would be must see. I think that's a strong prediction. I'm going to say that I don't think Roman Reigns will be champion by that point, by the way. But I think that Cody could be coming back at the Rumble. I do agree with that prediction.
For me, it's got to be Seth at Mania, because I know Cody beat him 3 times, but I think there's a story there that they can still tell with Seth Rollins. And I mean, whether it's I don't know. I don't even know how you would do it, really. But yeah, like I said, the story was Cody was supposed to win Money in the Bank if he hadn't got injured, which is why Theory now has it. But I don't know. It would make it, for me, it makes sense to be Seth Rollins. But yeah, I'm the same as you. I can't see Roman being champion by Mania. As much as I love this interpretation of Roman Reigns, with him not being on telly, he's really started to grain on me like Brock Lesnar was a couple of years ago when he was champion. He'd turn up once every 6 weeks, and they're just like, well, what's the point? Because he's not here half the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think maybe Cody may have cashed in Money in the Bank had he been the one that originally had won it, because obviously that was the plans, I believe, in place. So obviously Fury is a backup choice, so we'll have to see how it will play itself out. I'm not sure about this comment. Maybe you have to explain to me about this one. I like the pip. I'm not sure
Picture.
Picture in picture. There we go. Thank you. That's good.
Yeah.
See, I asked the question and then I don't know when it's brought up in the chat. Thank you very much there. Appreciate it, my friend. They should do it to every show. I do think it adds to every show. Obviously, but people that watch AEW as well on Fight TV, you don't miss out on the adverts either. But I think they do picture in picture on a lot of their shows as well. So, but we keep it WWE for this stream, because obviously it's a lot of it about Vince here. But Martin here coming with another Vince McMahon comment here says, is a wrestling genius guru without a doubt. No matter what he did in his personal life, he truly changed wrestling into something else. And we have to agree with that. That is why we are here. Without Vince McMahon, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't. Maybe someone else may have had the genius idea in the year 2000 or something. I don't know. But we know that Vince was the one that did it and created it, made it happen. And, change from what the territories were, change what NWA was. Obviously, WCW had to come back fighting then at that point in the mid-90s. We wouldn't have got none of this without Vince.
Maybe we'll be watching WCW.
Who knows?
Who knows?
It wouldn't just be 83 weeks, would it? At the same time, though, I mean, obviously you go back and we spoke about some of the high points as an on-screen character and stuff, and obviously like with the business choices like that for the wrestling fan, the wrestling product. I think we'd turn and say the wrestling genius, yes, but I think as we said at the start of this video, also this change probably needed to happen regardless of what was going on. I think Vince obviously still has his moments where he can pick and say, I think with Seth's music, when it was the Burn It Down, he brought that like where it was still in there, and that little touch came and elevated his music to getting really over back in 2018. But more than not, with a lot of stuff creatively we were seeing, I think we were ready to see something different. Obviously, we've spoken a lot about creative already, but I do think that that's probably something slightly different twist to this. Look, we want to see change, don't we, in WWE?
Yeah, I mean, Genius Guru is a bit for me. He's more of a yin and yang. Like he's 50% good, 50% bad. I mean, let's not be around it. At one point, he was talking about an incest storyline at some point during the late Attitude Era with his own daughter, and it's like, yeah, I don't think so, Vince. But like, it's Vince hasn't moved with the times, and I said this for a while that he's still booking it like it's the 90s, and you can't really do it no more. And that's, I mean, but this, it's kind of. We go back to that Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it was like the reason why we loved that rivalry so much was because how many people get to kick the living out of the boss? Do you know what I mean? And Stone Cold did it, and this was what drew everyone in. And he was like, he stuck his middle finger up to his own boss, and we all sat there at one point in our life and have had a boss that we hated, and we just want to go, do you know what? Kick, stunner, middle fingers, and then rant in your face. And but yeah, for me, he's a bit of a yin and yang, because he's, like I said, he's had good points, but he has also had some bad creative points as well.
Well, as I said in the TV14 video, we had Choppy PP, didn't we, with Val Venus and Kai and Ty, and obviously in the Attitude Era. So we've had Naked Midian. He's always my go-to, Naked Midian. That was awful to see as well. Like you say, we've had some terrible stuff. We had the Katie Vick storyline. So yeah, I mean, obviously, to everything it was very good. There's always been very bad as well.
May Young giving birth to a hand will always haunt me.
Absolutely. Did someone post a picture recently of a giant hand somewhere and said that the hand's grown up? It was a glorious moment on social media. A username that I think is quite fun to say out loud: Dangerous Sod, WF Rules, and WWE Trash. There we go. It's the take on that, on the probably on the PG and the Attitude Era. And we mentioned it about babyfaces. Stone Cold Steve Austin, obviously probably the best babyface booked of all time. Needs to start booking babyfaces better. Alyssa, totally agree. WWE, I think, struggles on to do that, but with Cody, they were going on to something right. Very unlucky with that injury. The timing of that was very unlucky, but Cody did seem to be going the right way. But had that continued, would it have soured? I don't know. The thing is with baby faces, they're not the cool characters, are they? And it's a way of trying to find to make them cool. The Attitude Era had a good way of finding rebellious ways. Obviously, like you said, there was Steve Austin, but The Rock had it as well going on, went bad, and then that rebelliousness to go good when using the bad stuff to be really favorable. But I think people have cottoned on over 20 years of doing that. That still now becomes generic babyface. And we're copying what we've seen in the past, trying to recreate what we've seen previously.
But the thing is it still works. Like, the amount of times, like, for instance, when Seth Rollins broke up the Shield, everyone hated Seth Rollins. And then obviously when he became champ, when he cashed in Money in the Bank, and everyone still hated him, but then obviously he got injured. When he come back, massive face pop, and he was a face from that. And it's just how wrestling works. It's just, for some strange reason, we all hate the bad guys at some point, or we get irritated. Like, I know a lot of people at this very minute are just like, I hate Theory. Not being funny though. A year ago when he was on NXT, you were probably loving him with his comedy work that he was doing with The Way and Johnny Gargano and stuff. And the fact that you don't like him now, it just proves that he's doing his job right as a heel. And then at some point he will turn face, and you'll end up cheering him again. It's a tale as old as time with professional wrestling. But for Cody Rhodes in this babyface thing, maybe the injury is a bit of a blessing in disguise, really, because if he had won the Money in the Bank and then he'd won it, and it would have been like, oh yeah, this is kind of what they're trying to do by forcing Cody Rhodes down our face. Maybe him having 9 months off, because then we get that reintroduction, that pop again when we hear there's more than one royal family in professional wrestling. Yeah, maybe it is a blessing in disguise for him. But then again, when was the last time we had someone like a Cody Rhodes come up into WWE? Because I struggle to think of the last person that came over from another company. I don't think we haven't had one from AEW before. So what are you looking at? You're looking at probably AJ Styles at the Rumble when he was introduced. Do you know what I mean? That's what 6 years ago now, I believe. So this is the problem: is we're not getting these baby face pops when we get these new people come in. And like I said, yeah, it's just like I said, it's WWE in general, really. But yeah, like I said, we don't get that many people come over to WWE. So which is why I think this is why Cody feels a bit more extra special, because he's gone away for 6 years or however long, he's come back, and everyone's like, oh my god, I'm so excited to see him. Like, everyone hated him in AEW. So you know what I mean? It's a weird way that wrestling works.
Absolutely, yeah. I couldn't agree with you more with everything you've just said there. Martin says, if instead Shane McMahon was left in charge of creative, what is one thing you would expect he would do? Martin says that he would put himself out there over every Monday night on Raw. I'm going to say 2 words, and they're 2 painful words as well. Raw Underground.
Raw Underground. That, or he would still be going around proclaiming to be the greatest wrestler in the world, you know, when tournament they had that was only full of Americans, because apparently no other people in any other country wrestle.
Yeah, perhaps that. Maybe he would have won the Royal Rumble, would have main evented WrestleMania, and then maybe we would actually be crying for the next Steve Austin, because we would see someone kick his ass. Maybe that was the intention all along. I don't know, but yeah, it would have been very, very interesting stuff indeed. And Martin also has said that he's enjoyed the whole stream, guys. It's been great. So both your thoughts and opinions are underrated without a doubt. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Obviously, we're grateful for everyone's comments and stuff that have come in as well, and we will just speak for about another 10 minutes as well on Vince McMahon before we do close off. But thank you everyone for your comments. If you can as well, if you've enjoyed this video, the way to help us always is to like the video, as always, to share as well with a friend, let them know SCW is here, and obviously subscribe to the channel as well. We're very close to 1,600 subscribers now. I believe 9 away on the last count. So if we can get to that milestone, would be really, really fantastic, especially with SummerSlam week now kicking in. Predictions will be coming as well. But before we close off the stream, I just want to get your final thoughts, really. Basically, obviously, Vince McMahon, like we say, he's retired. We said we were shocked. We've given our, opinions have changed with creative and stuff. Obviously, we've spoke about the allegations, but I mean, what will be your thoughts now going forward? And do you think that WWE then will be a better product for it?
I think it would be more of a precedent that it's an exciting time because it's the unknown. And we have never known what WWE is like without Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will probably be a bit skeptical because they're like, again, this comes back to whoever's going to be in charge with the pencil and booking the matches and booking the cards and stuff. But I think this is actually a really exciting time. As much as I'm not critiquing Vince for stepping down on stuff, and he had to do what he had to do. But I think, like I said, I can't wait to see what the viewership numbers were for SmackDown last night, because I imagine they got a massive rating pop from it. And it's going to be intriguing because people are now going to have to start tuning in every week to see what these changes are, because we don't know who's in charge. Yes, we know it's going to be Kevin Dunn and Pritchard until at least SummerSlam, I imagine. But going forward, and depending on who's put in charge, it might be a case of that this could be the best thing to happen to the company, because you might find yourself bringing in people that stopped watching the product because it was run by Vince McMahon. So for me, I would say it's personally a very exciting time for WWE. It's an unknown, but a very exciting time.
I'd have to agree. I think it's a very exciting time indeed there. And like you said, just a couple of comments are flying in. We've got a hi, by the way. Thank you very much for that. Abdursa Lunga. Thank you very much for tuning in. I've struggled on the name. I do apologize. I hope I've said that right there. And also, we have also Michael Miguel in the house as well. Thank you for checking out the stream. Melissa, we'll come to your question at the very end there for us. But no, I think you're bang on spot on with everything you said there. This could be a very exciting time going forward now. Obviously, like you said, many people may look to come back and check out the product. The curiosity killed the cat, as they say. We are creatures of habit. We have to know what's going on. The fact that something different is going to be there, it can add that exciting element. We could always be disappointed because of the fact we expect too much. Who knows? But from a standpoint, Vince has had to do what he's had to do. Obviously, as we said earlier on, the allegations have kicked in. As we said, we'll quote what was said to Tom Colohue in his stream and say, we'll link those streams into the chat after this goes off air. So if you want to check them out, you're more than welcome to go and do so. He jumped before pushed. He jumped before he was pushed. So obviously we have to wait and see what will happen with future Vince McMahon. But obviously, as the company guy that was with wrestling, he changed the industry altogether. It's something that we've all known as the constant growing up. We had some very magical moments. I've had some moments we wanted to say, what are we watching as well? We've had those as well. We won't deny that. But it's potentially, like you said, it could be potentially the best thing happening to WWE.
You look at every single wrestling podcast, YouTube channel, everything, it all comes back to one guy. And that one guy is Vince McMahon. Because more than not, most of the time, it's people like us. They're in their mid-30s. They've watched pro wrestling for 30-odd years. They've been through the Attitude Era, especially people like, is it Barry, NWC?
Yeah, NWC, yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, he's a big advocate for the Attitude Era. Vince McMahon. People I watch, for instance, Cultaholic, WhatCulture, WrestleTalk, Going in Raw. All these guys are like the same age as me, and it's all because of one guy. Some of them, you might get the occasional one that'll be a WCW fan that was forced to come over. It's a very rarity now that you find someone like that. But again, it all comes back to one guy, and that guy is Vince McMahon.
Absolutely. Yeah, can't argue with that. And obviously, we don't know what will happen with everything that's going on with his personals, but obviously we can determine that on a different day. Like I said, that's when we know when we can give our thank yous so positively or not at this particular moment. But that's pretty much our take with the Vince stuff. Is there any final words you'd like to say before we take our last question?
Just obviously depending on what happens with these allegations and stuff, it wouldn't surprise me if he headlines the Hall of Fame next year. If everything goes Vince's way and he comes out smelling the roses, he will probably headline the Hall of Fame next year. So I think it was you that texted me and said it'd be in Hollywood, or someone texted me and said, it's in Hollywood next year. It wouldn't surprise me. If not, obviously it'll be a couple of years, but he'll go in because that's who he is. And it's deserved. Just hopefully that it doesn't come under a red flag, if you know what I mean. Like it doesn't come under the fact that he'll be whatever this outcome this is. Hopefully, just to say he'll go in at some point. Just as and when is it? I don't know.
I think the final words I'm going to say on this is no doubt a wrestling genius. No doubt has given everything that we have gone to know and love about pro wrestling over the years, whether you've been a fan for 5, 10, even if you've been watching for a few months, you've been watching under Vince McMahon. But Vince McMahon, the wrestling genius, we'll wait and see how much of a naughty boy, if a naughty boy, he's been. And obviously that will change a lot of perspective. That will certainly change my perspective if that's the case, obviously, if we do learn of what happens. But at the same time, this has been a very newsworthy sort of 24 hours. Everyone's been talking about it, and it's done great things for a lot of people on the YouTube scene. I'm very thankful for everyone that's checked out our stream today, for talking about this and giving your thoughts as well in the comment section as well. One thing that's completely unrelated, as we've been talking about Roman Reigns, and Alicia, thank you for your question as well. We'll take it before we finish. Talking about Drew McIntyre doesn't deserve to beat Roman Reigns because his booking has been horrible. What has been your thoughts about the Drew McIntyre booking before we close things off?
Apart from the fact that they've dragged out this number one contendership match and the fact that it's going to be on SmackDown instead of the SummerSlam card, I think is a criminal injustice because these two guys know each other. They can put on an absolute barn burner of a match. I personally have enjoyed Drew McIntyre for the fact that, for me, I felt they've kept him out of the limelight and they've kept him out of the championship picture long enough that we've now got back around to the point where Drew can now be involved in a story for the title, because when he lost it, he had maybe 1 or 2 rematches, and then that's it. And he hasn't been involved with Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar or anyone who was a world champion until now, when we're getting towards Clash at Cardiff. So for me personally, I've really enjoyed it. Even when they, like I say, when he initially stopped going for the title, and I wanted him and Sheamus to team up and be the Celtic Warriors or whatever, and be a tag team, I thought would have been a great idea. But I've personally enjoyed it. Like I said, I just think it's a shame that the number one contendership for a match at Clash of the Castle, the first time in 30 years we're going to get a stadium show over here in the UK, that it's being decided on a SmackDown instead of SummerSlam, I just think is an injustice.
Especially when SmackDown is coming up, but like after that. If it was like the SmackDown after SummerSlam, I'd say totally different. But I agree with you. I personally as well. The way I look at it is that a lot of fans, turned on Drew McIntyre in his main event run, and it looked like if he hadn't been pulled away, he'd have had to turn heel. Maybe that's bad booking, Alyssa. Maybe that would be what I would say. But I think that fans, should have stuck with Drew McIntyre. I think his run was fine as champion during the pandemic era. I think that obviously it was a time for a change of the guard at that particular time. It's now time to get him back in. If you don't get him back in now, and you don't get him in as someone that could, because he's got something to gain by beating Roman. This is the thing. If he beats Roman, he gets back where he was, and you can start perhaps maybe feeling different about him. And he has then been booked well because he's the one that beat Roman Reigns. But at the same time, I look at it and say, well, I see her point of view. But here's the last thing I'm going to say before I pass it over to you, Steve, again, is that people were talking about Brock Lesnar last week on SmackDown, if he had walked out and stuff. And I saw a few streamers, and Tom being one of them, a few others, saying the idea of Seth Rollins perhaps being the person that could take on Roman Reigns, or perhaps we get Seth and Riddle in a triple threat match. Sure, this would have made sense as a triple threat match. You could have had Roman, Drew, and Sheamus. Roman pin Sheamus, and then we get Roman versus Drew then at Clash of the Castle. Sure, that would have made sense had Brock had not come back.
Exactly. I mean, but if you go by the allegations that apparently Goldberg was going to be Roman's challenger for SummerSlam, I'm just glad we've been saved that, to be honest with you. But this is what I mean. Every week we turn around and say this is how we think this is how it should have been booked. I think with Drew, the pandemic didn't help him, because when he eliminated Brock in that Rumble that year, the crowd went absolutely crazy for it. And then he obviously won the title at Mania. I think was a bigger pain because he won it in front of no one. Do you know what I mean? He won it in front of an empty arena. They didn't even have like the screens at that time. It was just an empty arena, and it just felt hollow and deflated. And I think that obviously his whole run during the pandemic, I just think it seemed lost because there was no crowd and no one could get involved in it. I think he suffered terribly, and I think they should have actually waited another year and waited until they got back in front of a crowd before putting that championship on him. But then again, like I said, for me, Drew can put on decent matches, and at the end of the day, it's what I watch the product for, is to watch decent matches. If you can entertain me in the stuff you do outside of wrestling as well, it's just a plus. And like I said, I've been entertained by Drew and Sheamus. I think their chemistry is great. I thoroughly look forward to watching it if it actually happens on SmackDown, or maybe you never know, they might push it onto SummerSlam. I do not know, but because I'm going to Clash at Cardiff as well, Clash at the Castle. It should have been called Clash in Cardiff because it's not in a castle. But like I said, I'm intrigued because I'm going to be there, and I want to. I'm going to say it now. I don't personally think Roman will. I don't think Drew will win in Cardiff because I find it, well, then again, Vince ain't in charge, so you never know. I was going to say, it's not very often you see the WWE Championship change hands outside of the US. So over in the UK, it was going to be a very slim opportunity. But now, no Vince McMahon, hey, you could be looking at Drew McIntyre, your new undisputed World Heavyweight Universal Champion at Clash in the Castle.
Absolutely. I mean, well, AJ Styles won it in the UK, in Manchester, against Jinder Mahal back in 2018. I believe a couple of, it's the Super Showdown, I believe, was Goldberg. We mentioned him, sadly, a minute ago, beating The Fiend. Less said about that, the better. That's one of the worst Vince creative decisions. But obviously, Drew McIntyre, you mentioned it, how he won his championship in front of nobody. He deserves his moment. He deserves that moment for the pop they got at the Royal Rumble back in 2020 to get that moment in Cardiff, not exactly Scotland for him, but of course it's the UK. It's as close to home. It's home ground to get. You're not going to get any bigger moment than that.
Pop. Exactly.
That'll be bigger to him than a WrestleMania. I can promise you how much that will mean to him personally.
Yeah.
And
this is his WrestleMania.
Absolutely. This is almost like, we're taking you out, we're building you back up, and we're going to do it slowly with the likes of Sami Zayn's, the Ricochets, whoever he's faced along the way. Sheamus had a couple of feuds with. We've seen it, we've done it, but they've got great chemistry. I would personally like to see it on the SummerSlam. They're not making the fun now at this point because it'd be too late by the time we've done it. We'd have already done the predictions. But at the same point, look and say, right, it is what it is. Clash of the Castle. For me, I think it's the right place for Drew personally. I think you need to make it happen. But hey, we'll have to wait and see. Like you say, creative could be very different between now and then. We've got Bruce Pritchard there now with the current plans. Could be someone. Could be a Paul Heyman. Could be someone that we have got no idea. Could be a fresh face that's never been involved with this before. Who knows? Freddie Prinze Jr. can make a return at this point.
Predictions going forward are absolutely blown out the window because I can no longer go by the 30-year scenario of how WWE have booked go-home shows and all this stuff going into pay-per-views. So we could be completely blown out of the water by this now, and we could be seeing some of the craziest stuff going forward. But yeah, like you said, because even just now when I said it, I didn't think Drew was going to win in Cardiff. But now Vince isn't in charge. My God, it is a possibility now. Now I'm back to 50-50, and now I've got to tune in for the next 4 weeks to see how the story evolves and how it is going into September.
The way and see how it'll play out. But it's a great last question. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for that. And thank you to everyone that's been watching the stream as well. For anyone that's missed anything that we talked about, particularly with the Vince McMahon retiring and our thoughts and our shock, who's been heavily featured for most of the product for the podcast. So I think now a few people have just dropped in the last few months. So go back to the start and go and check it out. If you've enjoyed this video, please drop it a like, share it with a friend as well. Let them know SCW is here, subscribe as well. Like I say, it's SummerSlam week coming now, so predictions will be dropping in the week on the channel. So I want to say, NXSteve, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been absolute pleasure talking to you about this. It's a very big topic as well, and obviously talking with you has been a lot of fun.
This was probably the most exciting one I've done with you in all the ones we've done, because it's not the normal. It's very abstract and it's very strange, and it's it's exciting. And yeah, thanks for having me on, man, because like I said, the last 24 hours have been crazy, and to sit here and actually have a conversation with someone and go and break it down and go in depth about it, it gets a lot off my head, but it just a lot of it makes more sense. And then obviously you get your input from the viewers as well, and they just add that little something extra. And yeah, like I said, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, thanks for having me on today, man.
Anytime. I'm always very grateful for our chat. Always, everyone that's in the chat with these podcasts always have got great articulate points. They always ask fantastic questions. So big thank you to all of you that have played your part in this, because you all make these shows what they are. We obviously have a great conversation, myself and Steve, but obviously without you, everyone in the chat, these shows are not anything. So thank you very much to everyone's involved. And like you say, it's good to break everything down. It's been a whirlwind. Wrestling news has been drunk for most of 2022. I feel, whether it's been simply an AEW star like Cody coming to WWE, whether it's MJF walking off, where we've got these allegations going on now, we've got Vince retiring. It's just absolutely one thing after another. And like you say, it's been crazy. It's been a whirlwind. But hey, this is probably one of, if not, we'll look back at this podcast probably in 10, 20 years and go, this was when Vince retired, and this is how we felt at that point. And we can look back and say, look, this is how we felt then, and now we can see how it played out. And like you say, it's an exciting time potentially as an on-screen viewer for wrestling going forward. Obviously, maybe not much will change between now and SummerSlam, but let's see over the coming weeks and months. It could be a very, very exciting time to be a WWE fan once again. But thanks everyone for watching. We really do appreciate it. And like I say, keep an eye on the channel. More videos will be dropping, and we'll see you very, very soon. All the best. Take care. We'll see you next time.